Hi, and welcome to Where Are They Now? I'm your host, Heather Linstad, from the class of 1985. Today I have a really special guest visiting with me. Didn't take too hard to twist his arm, but Russell Linstad, class of 1991. Russell, thank you for joining me on my show.
Oh, I'm glad to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. You know, it's funny, you've had a little bit of travel, and you're always kind of back in Chelmsford with the town and stuff like that. But from your Chelmsford High experience, where was your favorite moment of Chelmsford High, and what brought you like the excitement to go to school every day?
Yeah, I think the staff that worked here, the teachers that made it interesting, the coaching staff on all the sports that I played, they were outstanding. And always looking to promote, make people better, and do well at the classroom. So I think that was Heather, I'm sorry.
That's
but I think that's the biggest thing, the excitement that I saw from the teachers and the coaching staff to get you motivated and come every day. So I think that was a big part of it, that I enjoyed coming to school every day during high school.
And I mean, the funny part is, around the kitchen table and those kind of things, having parents that graduated from Chelmsford, grandparents, all of your grandparents and stuff, like my grandparents too. Did you ever feel pressure, though, going to Chelmsford or being a part of it? And
I think so. With all the family members being a part of the school and the history and so forth. Yeah, I think a little bit. But once I got here and understood, just everyone working together, and I think I found that I still keep in touch with so many people that I graduated with, the class of '91. Right. But yeah, so there was a little pressure going into it, but I think after I realized it was like a family here at Chelmsford High School.
And you talk about it, and sports have always been a huge thing, but that's always pressure too, right? As a freshman, do you remember thinking about football, because that wasn't something that you had done, really?
Right. Yeah.
And so, how was that transition to say, okay, I'm going to really play a sport that you had talked about, but that you hadn't really played?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's some anxiety with that, right? That goes along with it. But again, I have to go back to the coaches. They were great. They understood where you're at, and they try to push you to get better, right? And so, and I think that's carried on in my, as we've progressed, and I went to college and into the workplace. That you're going to have that anxiety. You're going to have those kind of moments where you question yourself. Do I have the ability? Yeah. But once you realize, put the time in, and have that support, like I did from my teachers and coaches, that you can work pretty well to advance.
Was there a coach in mind, though, that you thought that, like, all right, there's something that he said that motivated you to kind of have the strength, because you do obviously have strength, and you work out all the time, like right. that push to say, like, okay, it's never going to be easy, but if you push through it, you can get to that.
Yeah, I don't remember necessarily a quote or something to go, but Coach Cato, the football coach, and my coach, was just I guess a legend, and around not only Chelmsford as a football coach, but just in general as a coach where he had coached prior. And I think having that, where he was so well known and such a legend, that you wanted to meet that level, right? You wanted to work extra hard because he was so good and so, respected within the community.
Yeah, and in the school, a little bit of, obviously there's a little bit of fight between the houses. What house you're in, who your dean is, those kind of things.
Jack Conrad was my dean.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And was he the best when greeting you every morning?
Of course, he was great, right? He was outstanding. So.
But there had to have been one of your classmates that said, no, but I had Dean Quinn or somebody else.
Or Dean Toronto, right?
Yeah. Oh, that could have been a hard one, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Because Brian was in your class.
And Brian was in my class, right?
Yeah,
and the class of '91. So, but again, all great people and great representatives of the school.
So coming out of high school, you played sports, and actually, though, you did wrestling one year.
I did.
And then you stole a position from your cousin.
Yes, well, and I got to say that, Mark Sawicki, my cousin, he was the heavyweight wrestler at the time. Unfortunately, got hurt during his senior year, and they needed someone that was about his weight class, and they had me fill in. So, they beat me up pretty good to get me ready for the season, but I wrestled the heavyweight during my senior year. Was that with
Coach Rich? Or?
That was with Coach Rich, yeah.
Yeah, so another legend.
Another legend, exactly, right?
So your class was in trouble with coaches.
Absolutely, yeah.
So sports, the academics, I'm sure pushing you. did you really come out of Chelmsford knowing what you wanted to do, or were you kind of like thinking like, I'm going to go play football, those kind of things? Like where did you think? Did it come from the school, or did it come from maybe your father, of what you really wanted to do, but that really wasn't your first path?
No. And initially I didn't know, Heather. It was one of those things where, you graduate and you're like, all right, what do I do now? So what I had initially thought was, hey, all right, let's get some discipline. Was looking at the military schools, so I got accepted to Norwich. They had a Division III program that I was looking at playing football, and also Massachusetts Maritime Academy. Ended up deciding on Massachusetts Maritime Academy. Had that military background with it, so I looked at the Merchant Marine. Was thinking maybe that was a career that would be exciting. Travel the world. But had found out that really wasn't my cup of tea. So I ended up transferring. Went to the University of Massachusetts Amherst during my sophomore year, and I started, which we were just talking about sports, something that I'm passionate about. I ended up taking sports management as my degree. But in the back of my head, and you brought up a good point, our father was a police officer here in the town of Chelmsford. I grew up with that, and always in the back of my mind, I thought maybe that would be something that I'd be interested in.
Right, and I don't mind sharing my story. I thought I'd go into it until Dad said you had to shoot a gun, and I can't. I can shoot a gun, I just don't want to.
Right.
But when you think about that, and you talk about discipline and the military and those kind of things, like now you're starting to think like maybe I want to be in law enforcement. How does that work in teaching yourself like to shoot guns and just like thinking about like what could happen in situations, right? Like how does that mindset start? And you've gone to college and those kind of things, and they teach a lot of wonderful things about management and those kind of things, right?
Right, yeah.
But how does that mindset kind of come into play?
Yeah, and that's a lot of that's with the training, right?
Okay.
So that when they put you through the academy, but you're right, those are things that are in the back of your mind, like, hey, safety and everything else. But I think the passion of the job, right? Protecting your community, having a purpose to go to work every day. You kind of put that stuff in the back of your mind, but you also become confident with your skills. Right, and during that training, and that's something that's very important, right? The training of becoming proficient. You mentioned firearms and so forth, but also that mindset to be able to protect yourself and protect the community. So yeah, there's a little bit of a transition there, but I think if you're confident in your skills, then it's easier, right? Than being in a stressful situation, you're able to handle it.
But I think, too, you saw Dad. I'm not going to say that he didn't work really hard, but I never really felt fear for Dad working in the town of Chelmsford, right? And so you left to, didn't you get a call from a friend about the Greens?
Yeah, another 91 graduate, Jared Yoder.
Right, and so talk about that, like all of a sudden,
Yeah, that was neat. I think my friends from Chelmsford realized that I was looking in law enforcement. I kind of let it be known that I was looking at that career path. Started taking several tests around the Northeast, and was actually looking at other locations. At the time, Chelmsford wasn't hiring, so I was looking at other options. So I started going through the process, which was a good thing because I started learning the process of taking applications for law enforcement. But I got a call from Jared, and he knew I was looking in there. He was attending Elon College in Burlington, North Carolina. And he called me up and said, hey, Russ, I have a friend that's in my National Guard unit, and he's a Greensboro police officer, Greensboro, North Carolina police officer. Says it's a great agency. It's a good-sized agency, so there's a lot of opportunity. He said, why don't you come down, and you can stay with me on the campus, and you can take the test. So I took the test, and my sister drove me down. You drove me down to North Carolina. We made a road trip out of it. So thank you. I appreciate it.
And that was crazy, right? You knew nothing about North Carolina.
I had no idea.
But,
and I think me and you during the trip, we were like, where are we?
Where are we? But do you think, though, like you had some opportunities to travel for hockey? You had time to travel a little bit with Mass Maritime. It was kind of interesting that you would say that you were able to just have the confidence to move to North Carolina. Like you took a test, and you also said, if I pass this, I'm going to go there.
Right.
So do you think that just some of the things that you had done, just the confidence you built in Chelmsford, some of the things that you had done with ice hockey, you had traveled and those kind of things, and with Mass Maritime, that it was going to be an easy transition?
Yeah, I think you make a very good point. Because, now don't get me wrong, I was passionate, so it didn't matter where I was going to go.
Yep.
That's what I wanted to do. I made that determination, hey, I'm going to get involved in law enforcement. And so I was focused no matter where it was. But I think you're right, it made it easier by doing a lot of traveling when I was younger. You bring it up. We traveled to Switzerland to play hockey. We traveled with many of the graduates of 1991 that we went and played. Mass Maritime, we did go overseas. We did a semester at sea where we traveled to Europe. So yes, that made that transition easier to move to a location because, you know, I love Chelmsford, right? I had no intentions of moving out of this town. However, that opportunity opened and I grabbed it, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, I think you make a valid point, getting out traveling so you see other things, it made it easier, right?
Easier. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You got the job at Greensboro, and like, what was it like to just, you know, not even speak the language?
Yeah, you're right. No, I went down there and they were like, where's this guy from, right? You know, with that accent. It actually helped in certain situations because it kind of diffused, you know, domestic situations. They're like, wow, where are you from? And it kind of calmed down the argument that was going on. But no, it was a good transition. Yeah, I was kind of out of my element. I wasn't familiar with the area, but you know, attended academy, did 6 months of academy, which is held at the police department itself. So it's nice. You're getting to learn how the department operates and so forth. Yeah, it was a great experience, and you know, I learned a lot, and I realized I picked the correct career or the career path that I should have chose.
But sometimes you've always used your strength and those kind of things. I mean, you were top cadet, right?
Yeah. During that, my physical fitness, you know, I received the physical fitness award during my years in academy, but also received you know, several accolades for Officer of the Month. I was very proactive and worked hard when I got down there, and it was kind of, I don't know if it was you know, the Northeast thing of really putting time in and working hard in becoming better.
Right.
But I'll have to give a lot of credit. We were talking about sports and so forth here at Chelmsford, and the academics. I think I was pushed to perform, right? And to do better and to want to excel at what I did.
Now, was there one arrest when you were first like a rookie that like stands out that you were just like, I can't believe I did that?
Yeah, you know, interesting situation. It was my first night by myself. You have a field training officer for a certain amount of weeks. I think it was 4 weeks at the time. And one of the officers, the zone that I worked in, ended up getting in a pursuit. And so he's calling on the radio for help, for backup, and you know, I'm like, oh boy, this is really real, right? And so he ended up, the suspect vehicle ended up crashing into his vehicle, and the occupants ran. So as I pulled up, I see everyone running everywhere, and so I took off, and I was in good shape. I just came out of academy, and I ended up chasing the driver, and it was a long pursuit, and the officer that I was assisting, he was a little bit out of shape, so I ran right by him to catch this guy. So it was like, wow, you know, this is real, right?
Yeah.
You know, and but no, it was interesting, but again, looking at protecting the community, and I really got a sense of like helping, right, and being him, and that was the rewarding part of the job, is how I can help this community, how I can help the people in there, you know.
Because you also became a dive coach, right? Didn't you water?
Yeah, that was part of it. That was so I was on an underwater recovery team, and they certify you as a diver, and that's to locate, you know, unfortunately sometimes locating bodies, but also evidence to a crime. We would search for things like guns or so forth, or whatever the evidence that was associated with a crime or an offense.
So how many years were you at Greensboro?
Yeah, I did 9 years.
Yeah.
So I did 3 years as a patrol officer. Then I was transferred to a street narcotics unit, and that's where we didn't answer, like call answering to the radio or domestic disputes and so forth. We worked on the street narcotics issue that was going on in the city.
Yeah.
So.
And so from there, though, you moved into the federal government. Like, and how did that kind of come about? Like, I think we talk about it. We know that I have to say sports have driven us in our careers. But like, was it a next step? And was that what it was? Just the adrenaline, and I wanted to say that, but like something like, hey, I'm passionate about this, but there's got to be more to what I can give?
Right, absolutely. And so I worked with a lot of federal agents while I was a state and local officer with the city of Greensboro. They had asked, hey, listen, are you interested in the federal government? And the difference, and I loved my experience, and I think it allowed me to carry on to the federal government. But the federal government it was at a bigger stage as far as helping, right? And again, to go back, Greensboro was in a community, which was great and enjoyed and was really appreciative of the experience I got to help that community. But federal government was a little bit bigger stage, right? Now we're helping the country, right? And helping internationally. So it was that next level for me. And don't get me wrong, I could have stayed in Greensboro and been perfectly happy, but I felt it was something that, I could make a bigger difference by joining the federal government.
Right. And you got the position, you got located to a town that I knew more about than you did, in Messina, New York.
Right.
And what was that transition like, though, too? Like leaving Greensboro, because you had some great experiences there, those kind of things, and now you're getting to another level. And again, having to move to an area that you're not sure about, right? And how was that in the transition? And because it's easier when you're comfortable, right? So you had the uncomfortable part of living somewhere you didn't know and starting something new.
No, that was a transition as well, right? Because I was comfortable in the job. I enjoyed the area, and it was a lot warmer in North Carolina than it was in the Northeast. So that transition, I applied for several jobs with the federal government, FBI, ATF, all the three-letter acronyms. I ended up getting picked up with my agency that I currently work for, Homeland Security Investigations, and that was the first location. They offered me Messina, New York, and I said, okay, I'll go to Messina. I don't know much about it, but I'll go, right? And you made the comment, you know more about it because you had been there prior, right?
Yeah, I had friends that lived there, which was kind of crazy.
Right.
But that's a sport. That's a sport something.
Right.
Yeah, well,
exactly.
they play hockey up there.
Right, they do, absolutely. That was, but again, it was to meet that goal, right? And I was driven to do it. So that didn't come into a lot of effect of like the location. It was more about, okay, how can I progress? How can I make things better, right?
Now, in that same kind of realm of almost what you were doing with Greensboro, but to a different extent. So what kind of things in investigations and stuff like that can you talk about that you were doing in Messina?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's totally, it's similar in ways. You use your investigative skills that I learned as a police officer to carry on as a criminal investigator with the government. But the cases were a little bit different. They were more long-term cases, investigations, looking for more of, whereas in Greensboro, I was looking more for the supplier locally, right? Whereas now I'm looking globally, internationally. And my agency is international. It's we have over 200 offices within the United States, but we also have over 75 internationally. And just to kind of explain, a lot of people, not aware of what we do with Homeland Security investigations, but we basically, to keep it simple, is any illegal commodity coming into or out of the country, we investigate, right? So whether it's drugs, firearms, currency, people, so it's a lot of areas that we look at and investigate, but we're always looking for the higher level, the cartels or the major groups that are trying to bring into our country or export out of the country. But then also, obviously with terrorism, and that's something that we also, with that international nexus that we look at. So when I got to the office in Messina, New York, it was a smaller office. It was a border location. So again, we're looking at illegal contraband coming across the border. And that's what we focused on. And it didn't matter what the commodity was, whether it was drugs, firearms, you name it. It was very busy. But yeah, and since it was a small office, our bigger offices, you can get into one specific group, and that's specifically what you work. But with my office, it was smaller. So any programmatic area that came across the table, we investigated. So what did that consist of? Narcotics, child exploitation, human trafficking. Again, we talked about financial crimes and crimes related to people smuggling, people into and out of the United States.
And for that, though, you won some accolades for those kind of things.
So you actually attended. It was an award that I received from, they call it OCDEF is the acronym, but it's the Organized Crime Enforcement Drug Task Force. Had a large-scale investigation that led to several, I think it was 30 indictments, millions of dollars seized, and we were recognized for the outstanding investigation down in New York City, which, again, you traveled when I received the award.
With that, though, and all the recognition, what you've done in Messina, though, obviously you took a different position down in South Carolina now. And
so I'll back up a little bit. When I was up in Messina, we had a new unit that was being created. It's called the Border Enforcement Security Task Force. And what that was a combination of federal, state, local, and tribal law enforcement working together, which makes so much sense, right? All of us working together to combat crime, right? And so I was promoted as a group supervisor to run that new unit. I put together the unit, and it was one of those that didn't really know if we were going to be successful or not, but got the right personalities, people that were driven, people that had the same passion every day to go out, protect the community, protect our country. And we were very successful from the beginning. I was then promoted to the resident agent in charge and oversaw the office and the Border Enforcement Security Task Force. And you're correct, I did 17 years total in Messina, and then I recently moved down 2 years ago to Greenville, South Carolina.
Right.
And that's where I'm at right now.
Because it's warmer.
Exactly.
Yeah. but you talk about it, and it just seems like, and again, maybe it's not, but your father had an influence in the whole thing,
yes.
But it really, in the way you're driven and everything that you've done, like building different things, have really been some of the things of probably being in sports. Right?
Yeah. And my sister played sports and was very successful and pushed her younger brother to be better. So I have to give you a lot of credit. But yeah, my parents, you and the family, always wanting to progress and to be better. So absolutely. And I think it's, a lot of credit to this community in Chelmsford, right? Where that's the mindset, right? To be better.
The right? Teamwork, though. And you just said you put together the right personalities and the teamwork.
Coming from here, right? Where that's where the expectations work as a team, right? Work as in be successful not only in the classroom, but also on the field.
Yeah.
Right?
And so you've shown your little bit of intensity and how much in passion that you love your work. But talk about the other thing and the passion is of being in Messina, the community and those kind of things, and having your two sons grow up in there and watching them play sports and how they've progressed in that respect. How do you think you've influenced them like Dad influenced you? Yeah.
Well, of course, as you know, intensity, right? So I get them fired up as much as I get fired up. We talk about this accomplishments and so forth and the awards that I received in work and so forth and the passion. But yeah, the two boys, very passionate about them. It was great in Messina, not knowing that area. It was a small community, so I really got a lot of time to spend with them. And same type of thing, right? The sports and the teamwork and the respect and so forth. And they're both great kids.
And you got to coach Nick a little bit more than
I coached both of them with the hockey.
With
Nick
the hockey.
More so than Jake. Jake was a goalie, so I didn't.
I know you.
I relied on you for that.
I know.
Right? Yeah.
But talk about how you felt when Jake said, "Okay, I'm going to play football." Was it? And because I remember Dad being like, not really a fan, Mom and Dad, of maybe you blowing out your knee or those kind of things. Because I mean, Dad said the same thing to me if I did anything that sports were over. Like, how did you feel though? Passing it on to Jake?
Oh, well, I made it seem like I wasn't excited, but I was pumped up.
Okay.
Yeah, deep down I was pumped up. I was ready to go. So, but no, and Nick played when he was younger, played some football, and he loved soccer, and he ended up going towards that route. But yeah, no, it was great, and I liked would I have loved them to play at Chelmsford? And I think they would have loved to as well.
Right.
But at the time where I was living. But yeah, no, it was great. And it was a great area to raise two boys. And they're doing great themselves right now. So.
Right, and thinking about playing sports.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So talk about a little bit about the rivalry of playing Nick and Jake in the new sport that we love, pickleball.
Yeah, I'm passionate about this game that both of us like and enjoy, and we got the kids involved in it as well. So yes, pickleball, that is the new craze, and we're fanatics about it. So and they're really good. So I got to continue to play so that me and you don't get beat. Right?
Well, and where do you think that they might think about, like when they're talking to you about like your experience at Chelmsford, and I know you still talk about it and those kind of things.
Yeah.
What are kind of the things, and even if you're just talking to people that are watching the show, like if you really want to go into law enforcement and the opportunities, I mean, you don't have to be an athlete, but it seems like these are kind of some of the pathways that led you to where you are now.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is be passionate about it, right? I tell everyone, be passionate about what you do, regardless of what it is, right? Because it makes it easy to go to work every day, you know? So, but yeah, that's what I'm and teaching the boys, right? Be passionate, regardless of what you choose, whatever path you choose, be passionate about it so that it makes it easy going to work every day.
So, like, when you're in law enforcement, though, did you feel like because you're confident, you're passionate, that I know it can't always feel safe, but do you feel more safe because of kind of the way that you were trained and the way that you feel about what you're doing?
Yeah, of course. And you got to put the extra time in, too. I mean, you can go through the basics and so forth, but I think it's important to continue to train, to continue to get better in your career path, right? And be able to, so that you have that confidence, right? Keeping yourself in shape and you know, doing the extra things to keep proficient with your firearm and so forth, so that you are confident in those skills. Because, yeah, I mean, it can be one of those overwhelming,
right.
You know, if you're not prepared, right? And I think that's with anything, right? If you're not prepared, right, it makes you nervous, right? It makes you kind of uneasy. So I guess that would be the case with everything. Be prepared. Spend that extra time, right?
And I would say that those are kind of some of the learning tools that we all learned from being at Chelmsford High.
Absolutely.
I agree 100%. Because it was, I don't want to ever say that I was competing against my classmates,
right.
But it really felt like there was a level that you were supposed to continue to try to advance yourself.
Absolutely. And that family kind of atmosphere, right? Makes it easier,
right?
That everyone's kind of pulling each other up and supporting.
Right. And
you know.
and saying the right things. Hopefully
right.
they were being truthful.
Right? Exactly, right? Yeah.
And hopefully all of our teachers were saying, like, yeah, we see them being success. They kept saying that you're going to be a success
right.
someday.
But I think that's important. And I think that is key about the teachers here, that they're pushing that, right? And they're obviously passionate about what they do to push that. You know.
And you have a friend that's in the school system.
Yes, I do. Yes.
That class of '91, they just keep coming back.
They keep on coming back. You're talking about Jeff Parks?
I might be.
Jeff, and can I add something with that?
Sure.
So with Chelmsford High School and keeping the friends, you know, I know a lot of people have their college friends and so forth, but I got to give a shout out to my good time boys. It's a fantasy football of the '91 graduates: Bob Reed, Dave Loro, Jeff Parks, John McPhee, Rob Correa, and Brian Toronto. So great guys. Can I add that one more? Had our 50th birthday this year, and we all celebrated together. So great guys. And again, I've kept all these friends from the class of 1991 and from Chelmsford. So I'm very appreciative.
Well, it's nice that you can talk about your age. Again, Russell, thank you for joining me on
absolutely.
my show. For everybody that joined us today, I hope that we didn't embarrass ourselves for the Where Are They Now, but thank you and tune in again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.